He has starred in, directed, and produced some of the most iconic films ever. He is a legend, and tonight we're talking the films of Clint Eastwood here on Reel to Reel Talk.
Film is a medium that transports. All I have to do is pop myself in front of the TV to watch a movie, and I can just enjoy it, whatever place the film takes me to.
Movies have always been an escape. It gives you a whole new world to be in.
I have a rekindled love affair with movies.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Reel to Reel Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and it is time once again to talk all things movies. Joining me, as always, are the Reel to Reel Talkers, Susan Chisholm and Paul Britton. Welcome, guys, as we get a chance to talk about one of the most legendary figures in all of film, Clint Eastwood.
Seriously, he's one of the first actors that I know that I could recognize from a young age.
Yeah, you don't get much bigger than Clint Eastwood.
No.
This is true. Not
because
to
my dad. Because my dad.
Oh, okay.
Everyone's dad.
No joke. Just right off the bat, when we talk about someone like Clint Eastwood, we have to look at just the longevity of a career such as his, going as far back as 1955. 91 years old, still churning out films. And, one of the other things that I'm looking forward to talking about is discovering that I wasn't 100% aware of all the films he's directed. There's some pretty common titles that I was like, how did I not know he directed that movie? So as we prepare to talk about his most recent release, Cry Macho, that came out this past week, we thought we would take a look at the career of Clint Eastwood and talk a little bit about some of the films that for us, stood out and are the films we think of when we hear the name Clint Eastwood. And so I'm excited, guys, because we all come from sort of, not maybe separate generations, but we have a sort of a different width and breadth in terms of our film experience. And so I'm really curious to see what kind of films we sort of come together on and what other films that we've enjoyed that maybe we bring to the picture individually. So, Susan, tell me a little bit about how you sort of were first exposed. I know you said your dad, but talk a little bit about that. How did you first encounter Clint Eastwood?
My dad was every Sunday afternoon watching Westerns. And by watching, I mean usually resting his eyes, AKA napping. While the Westerns were running, and it was fantastic. And so, there are countless times I can remember walking through the living room or just sitting there with him watching movies. And so seeing Clint Eastwood was not something that was out of the ordinary. So, and I think to be honest, every house has one of those velvet paintings of a cowboy, and I'm pretty sure the one that we had was Clint Eastwood. I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty sure that somebody was
it wasn't Elvis.
No, we didn't have Elvis. We had a cowboy. We had a cowboy, and actually an oil derrick as well. So yeah, I mean that's probably my first earliest recollections of Clint Eastwood, earliest exposures, I guess, of Clint Eastwood.
Gotcha. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, so I got cable when I was in 1979, I think. I was 5. I was going into kindergarten. I know the day that I got cable because it was like the day before my first day of kindergarten because I didn't want to go to kindergarten because we had cable. I wanted to sit home and watch cable. But Every Which Way But Loose was on nonstop early on in cable, and it was just one of those movies that was just, if you had HBO at the time, it was just, you could find it. And so oddly enough, that was my introduction to Clint Eastwood, Right Turn Clyde. And the and then my dad, like everybody else's dads, loved Clint Eastwood, and so we would, before we even had a VCR, we would go to places where like you could like rent a room, and they would show you a movie. The ones we would watch would be Pink Panther movies or Clint Eastwood movies, or James Bond. It's Pink Panther, James Bond, and Clint Eastwood. And so like, I mean, I saw the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly when I was super young. I saw Thunderbolt and Lightfoot when I was super young. Yeah. And I mean, Sudden Impact was one of the first R-rated movies I saw in a movie theater. Like, I remember going to see Sudden Impact because my dad had showed me Dirty Harry, and so it was like, okay, we're gonna go see Sudden Impact now. And this gun shoots through schools, and it's like, I don't know if that's entirely appropriate, but okay, like, yeah. I mean, Clint Eastwood has always been in my consciousness, and it's just, he's iconic. Like, I mean, you cannot top Clint Eastwood, from like 1965 to 1992. It's just you were going to see anything he put out during that time frame if you could make it to the theater.
Sure, absolutely. For myself, I can say honestly that I discovered Clint Eastwood not late, but later than most. If I think back to like, when was how far back can I think of a situation where I was watching a movie in real time as it was released? It was a Clint Eastwood film. You might be surprised to find out that it was 1982's Firefox.
Oh, wow.
That was sort of the first film I can think of that I was taken to a theater to see that was a Clint Eastwood film. But as I grew to appreciate films and so forth, you can't not study the films of Clint Eastwood and, dive, deep, like you said, 1965 and beyond, into his Westerns. And of course, the Dirty Harry series of films is, these are the iconic films that sort of built his career. But he's been making films, like we said, as far back as 1955, when he was first credited in his first acting role in a movie called Francis in the Navy. And also, by the way, that same year, uncredited, he was in Tarantula. And so right off the bat, he's off and running.
And now I have to see Tarantula, of course.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we do this. But here's a guy who builds his career really beginning in 1958 with Westerns. And there's a gap that's very interesting, I find. From 1958 to 1964, we don't see any Clint Eastwood work. But it's 1964's iconic film, A Fistful of Dollars, that begins a series of films that really helped define Clint Eastwood from, at least at that point, his work in Westerns. Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I remember seeing The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly with my dad, but this was, again, sort of in my young adult life that I was, once I expressed interest, my father was all about like, well, you got to watch this. And
in that gap, he was doing Rawhide. I mean,
that's right.
So it's not like he was not busy.
Right.
Just like
Yeah. But again, I'm not sure how many of the three of us have seen those three, all together. But I can revisit those films often. I just absolutely love them. So
I'm curious, like, because I saw The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly years, probably a decade or more before I saw Fistful of Dollars and A Few Dollars More. Like, how so was it long before, like, did you always know these other two movies and you just came upon it much later? Or
I came upon it much later and learned only then that it's supposedly a trilogy, but not really. Like, they're collectively the same, but it's hilarious because when you look at the casting across each film, it's already like, do they belong together? I'll always say yes. But I discovered The Good, the Bad, the Ugly first, and then only later did I find A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More. Whatever the case, I love them. Susan, your thoughts on those films?
I have seen all of them, and actually, I mean, I get the grouping them together as a trilogy. I don't necessarily agree. Like
They're not story wise.
no, they're not. And like to me, it's more like they're in the same universe. They're in the same,
Sure.
But the Fistful of Dollars was probably the first movie that I saw him in. That was one of the first movies. So like that, and that was when I was young. And I mean, of course, like it came out a lifetime before I was born. That sounds terrible to say. Like it came out 21 years before I was born. So
yeah.
Hey, at least I can say it was 6 years before I was born. So I feel pretty good.
But yeah, no, I think that's some of the most like easily recognizable, iconic, like you said, work that he's done. And it's incredible to think about. He wasn't young in 1964.
Yeah.
He wasn't a baby.
He was already in his 30s.
And we're going to talk about that. So,
Yes.
that becomes a theme.
It really, really does. Through the early to mid 70s, we start to get introduced to more of his iconic characters, or at least genres. When you, of course, are introduced to 1971's Dirty Harry, 1973 Magnum Force, The Gauntlet in 77, and throughout all of this, we see sort of these parallel paths of his westerns and his, police. What would you describe him as, Paul? What are those?
Would he be like an anti-hero, even though he's a police officer? So he's supposed to be the hero,
right? Yeah,
I don't know. Like it has an interesting relationship. The whole Dirty Harry series has an interesting relationship with police brutality because it confronts it head on, but. And it, honestly, in Dirty Harry, it confronts it in such a way that it's like, this happens, and okay, and it takes it a little more seriously, when the Enforcer or Magnum Force comes out, and it's problematic, and they acknowledge it as problematic, and I don't know if this invented the police chief yelling at the star officer on the squad, but it certainly did a good job of perfecting it if it didn't invent it. I mean, someone constantly pissed off at Dirty Harry for doing something, but and this is when he's directing too, like, so IMDb lists him as an uncredited director on Dirty Harry, which is kind of crazy, and like I had no idea, and but like he directs High Plains Drifter at this time, which I watched that today. Like I've been doing a mega deep dive on Clint Eastwood because there's a lot of stuff I haven't seen, and this was one of them. And let's just get it out. Like he's problematic. Clint Eastwood is problematic with his movies, not just like Dirty Harry, like police brutality, but like violence against women is prevalent. It's not something that is just touched upon, but it comes up a lot. And if you follow his personal life at all, it traces into there too, not the violence, but just like the inability to sort of relate reasonably with women. I don't know, his stuff is really, really interesting, it really is, to put it nicely.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that from a purely film standpoint, he starts directing as early as 1971's Play Misty for Me, and then there's quite a few titles that he directs and acts in throughout pretty much the remainder of his career. And that's where, like I said, I'm often surprised, is I didn't realize he directed Firefox. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Sudden Impact in 1983.
Right.
Pale Rider, Heartbreak Ridge. I mean, the list goes on, and this becomes sort of, the path that his career begins to follow, and that not only is he acting, but he's obviously directing and producing. And so I think where the turn of his career really starts to surprised me is 1992's Unforgiven. Becomes one of his most iconic works.
I mean, it's the
Yeah,
pinnacle. It's the pinnacle.
Sure.
It's not. I mean, as a director, he does. He's remarkable, and it's. I don't know. It's a work of a lifetime.
Right. And what I was going to say was that it's this movie and the subsequent In the Line of Fire where he starts to really portray those characters that are aged. And we're talking 1992, 1993. I mean, In the Line of Fire, he plays the Secret Service agent that, is past his prime. And yet here we are, 30 years later. And,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Again, we'll get to that.
Right. Yeah. So having talked about that, let's jump forward and sort of skim from 1992 forward. What are some titles from that portion or from that point forward of his career that for you guys are standout titles that you enjoyed either watching or learned, hey, that's a Clint Eastwood project? For instance, like I didn't remember that he directed Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I mean, that's stuff like that surprised me. What else stands out to you guys from his later work?
I'm gonna pitch in and say like $1 Million Baby was, I think, maybe his most awarded.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of he's directed and started it as well. I watched it recently. That's why it's kind of stuck out in my head. It was kind of like, you could do that. Like at that point he was 73 when that film came out. So that's saying something else. That's incredible. I mean, that was in 2004. Watching, what was the other one that I watched recently? Not recently, but like not very long ago. Gran Torino. That's only because I watched it recently. It's not anything that I don't think was anything like standout or special, but I just remember because I watched it very recently. Yeah. It had, the kind of the problematic theme kind of pops up there that Paul was talking about too.
Sure. So. You mentioned $1 Million Baby, and as familiar as I'm with that film, one of the things that I also learned about his work is I had forgotten how many times he scores his own movies. In addition to directing and producing, he also writes the scores. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting career. Paul, what about you? Some of the standout titles in the latter half of his career.
You're not going to believe this, but A Perfect World is a great, fantastic movie. And, this is one of those, like, Kevin Costner's in it, yes, but it's still really, really good. I mean, just movies that he's directed that he's not in that are really good. I'm not going to count Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. That movie is a slog fest, but Mystic River is not. And that movie just punches you in the face and is just like, here, enjoy. I also, The Changeling is, I mean, that movie's weird. Like that movie is like, that's a tough hang movie, but 100% worth it. Great performance from Angelina Jolie in that one. The controversial American Sniper, not for me. Some people like it. And this is where American Sniper is where it becomes like really, honestly, it's kind of starts with a little bit with $1 Million Baby, although I did really enjoy Changeling, but he gets to be too much. Like at this point in his career, everything he does is just, it's too much. I have a hard time seeing Clint Eastwood's movie is coming out again and being like, oh, that's cool. I feel like the problematic aspects of his movies haven't really gone away. They've changed a little bit. And it's like, at some point, like, you've made amazing movies before.
Right.
It feels like you're making conscious conscious decisions to be problematic. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that too much? I don't know.
I mean, you and I have always looked at movies differently, so I don't know about problematic, but I just think that if we look at just the last 7 years, 2014 to now, the thing that I continually see is that there's not consistency within the quality of the work that he produces. American Sniper, Tough Watch, I wouldn't, put it up there anywhere near his top work. By the time you get to 2018's The Mule and Richard Jewell, there you have like two such very different level of quality. Richard Jewell, fantastic. The Mule, great story, but it just was like, it just, and
honestly, that movie is 10 times better with somebody other than Clint Eastwood playing the lead.
Sure.
And I'm not even kidding. Like, it's just, the things that he is doing just are not believable from Clint Eastwood at this point in his career.
Yeah, and I think some of it is this is a guy who basically can write his own check and his own ticket. If he wants to make a film, he's going to make a film, and he obviously wants to make films because he keeps making them. Yeah. I just don't know that we're seeing, from Unforgiven forward, there is a definite downward trend in the quality of the work that he produces. So
yeah. But when your pinnacle is Unforgiven, though, you kind of can just make whatever you want,
right?
I mean, it's arguably the best Western ever made. So,
I think that's kind of what his career arc suffers from, is that, hey, he's a known legend. No one can deny that. He's going to make the film he wants to make, and that is very much evidenced in the movie we're going to talk about as part of this conversation as we get into looking at his most recent release. Just last week, we saw the release of a film called Cry Macho. And, oh boy. This is now 2 weeks in a row where I will say this. There are trailers out there that fool me into thinking, ooh, this is going to be good. And then I watched the movie and realized, darn you, trailer.
That's interesting because there was nothing about this trailer that made me think I was going to enjoy this movie. Like, I just saw Clint Eastwood ambling along as a cowboy, and I'm like, no, I'm not buying it. And then sure enough, they put him on a horse, and it's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me.
And to be fair, watching this movie and watching him walk around, it's like, man, he's real old. Just the way that he moves it's stiff, and he's moving like an old man, and it's hard. It was hard for me to be like, yeah, I can see him being up on a horse right now.
No.
I think for me, whether it's about, it's for me, it's a given. He's 91 years old. He's still producing movies. Good for him. My struggle with this film has more to do with the absolutely horrible writing of this script. It's one of those things that has a measure of promise if you want to make a feel-good story about this particular topic and subject that's based on a book. The problem is that the script writing was so basic that when you layer in some acting from the surrounding cast that was not stellar, this became a struggle to get through. Jen and I watched it, and I turned to her on more than one occasion, and I was like, it's like we're going to find out that I was making a joke, but I'm like, did one of his, children or grandchildren write this script, and he's just making this film because, it was. That's what I struggled with. Was the writing was just so not there.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood movies are rarely entertaining, and so they rest on them being impactful and meaningful, and this was not impactful or meaningful. Mm-hmm. And going through, and kind of filling some gaps from 1970s all the way through to, I hadn't seen The Mule, so I watched that this past week. and his earlier stuff, he just has such a presence. He's one of those guys, like Kevin Costner, like some of the other actors I've mentioned before, who they just show up and they're not doing anything, they're just being their person, and he's like that, but his presence is so like thick and so just layered that it works, and he doesn't have that presence anymore. It's just he's totally lacking any presence whatsoever, and so he can't be the lead. He doesn't work as the lead in a movie, and and that's the Mule, and that's this Cry Macho. It doesn't work, and it might be the script, but I tend to think that like he can't deliver a line. Like it's just like the editor's doing a lot of heavy lifting on this. I feel like
especially in the early fight scene where I don't know what happened there, but
he punched somebody at 91 and they fell down.
He didn't. Is the point?
Yeah.
I think that there were that there was a potential in this film that just wasn't met, and like you said, Sergio, like the writing was very basic. It could have had so much more. It could have been so much more. And I think maybe recasting it with a different lead might help, but would you still want to watch it? I mean, I didn't.
I lost interest very early on.
So did I. And that's not something that is out of the ordinary for me. That sounds really horrible to say it like that, but like I was going into it and I was sitting there multiple times. I pulled up the remote and pushed the button just to see how much time was left on the film. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
We're 20 minutes in. Are you kidding me?
That is exactly at one point what happened to me. And I was like, there is no way that the kid's mom was all like, yeah, baby, come on. No.
It's not happening.
So much came out of nowhere.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And it didn't, it came out of nowhere and it went nowhere. Yeah. So that was kind of the whole thing was just kind of like, could have been better.
Definitely a struggle of a film. Again, I'm always hopeful. I know, again, different. I look at movies different from other folks. I'm always hopeful when I see Clint Eastwood because I hang my memories of his work on movies like Mystic River, movies like $1 Million Baby, Unforgiven. But it seems like more often than not lately, I end up being disappointed. So. With Cry Macho, as we prepare to give it our taco ratings, then if you've been watching, we have a 5 taco rating scale that we use here on Real to Real Talk. You could give a movie as many as 5 tacos. And if you want to give it some extra love, you can throw on some guac. So, Paul, we'll start with you. Cry Macho, what is your taco rating?
I think it'd be nice in giving it 2, but it really doesn't deserve it. I'm giving it 1 taco. It's just a 1 taco movie. It's like,
Okay. All right. Susan.
I'm going to be mean too. I think I'm going to give it 2 tacos. Just, it earns the extra guac, half taco, whatever you want to call it. Because of the grandma lady. Like, I think she did a great job.
She's by far the best thing in the movie.
She's the best character, the best actress in the entire movie. It's not even
close. Yeah.
So.
Well, I was going to give an extra taco for Dwight Yoakam. I'm just kidding. No, this movie is going to get 1 taco from me. I was not pleased at all with it. And listen, if a film doesn't captivate me and keep me all the way through, I shouldn't have learned as much about Clint Eastwood. Additionally to what I knew while watching this movie. So I'll leave it at that. So. You can catch Cry Macho for a couple more weeks on HBO Max. It's also in theaters, so make sure you get out there, watch it, and tell us what you think. The career of Clint Eastwood, 91 years old. We cannot deny that he'll forever be remembered as a legend in the film world, whether we like it or not. All right. Well. Again, we love it when you stop by our social media. So we ask you that you please stop by our Facebook page, give it a like if you haven't. You can find us on Facebook at Real to Real Talk, Also, and actually, maybe while you're there, you can make sure you check out back episodes of the show, as well as finding our show posters on Instagram, so you can see what type of movies and such we've talked about in the past. Check us out at Real to Real Talk on Instagram. And we thank you for joining us on either Facebook Live or on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to click that subscribe button on our channel and click the notification bell so you know when episodes land, should you happen to miss them when we do them on Tuesday nights live. We love it when you watch along with us. And I want to give a shout out to Craig, who commented a bunch of films that he likes, and we thank you for doing so. Also, a big thank you to Toko Punk Productions, who's commenting along the way as well. All right, so with that, we're going to move into this week's segment, and we're going to start with one that we like to call "What the Hell Did I Just Watch?" Paul, take it away.
So we're going to go back to 1971. Clint Eastwood is in 3 movies.
What?
The third one was Dirty Harry. You might have heard of that one before.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was a movie called Play Misty for Me.
Yep.
You may or may not have seen it. You've almost definitely heard of it at least, but that's actually one I haven't seen. But another one I hadn't seen until this past week was the first one that came out in 1971, The Beguiled. And this is as wacky Clint Eastwood movie as you're going to possibly get. Like, you think it's weird that Dirty Harry, or not Dirty Harry, but that Clint Eastwood is 91 and like there's there's this highly attractive 40-something-year-old mom that is like super hot for him. Try this one on for size. He's a Union soldier in the Deep South and gets hurt, and a boarding school of girls takes him in, and all of the girls fall in love with him.
Okay.
Not only do all the girls fall in love with him, but also the head mistress falls in love with him. And one fateful night, he no less than 3 of the different women attempt to sneak him out of his room, and in the hopes that he will come and visit them in his room. And it turns out he doesn't go to the one that he probably should have chose, or one of the 2 that he probably should have chose. Instead, he picked the youngest because, of course, that's what you're going to do if you're Clint Eastwood, I guess. And as a result, one of them pushes him down the stairs, and the other one cuts off his leg. I swear to God, this is what happens in this movie. And then when the youngest of all of the girls in the thing, there's a 10-year-old who is the one who found him, finds out about what he did. She gets mad and confronts him, and he kills her turtle. And that is really the last straw for him. And that's where, that's don't kill a little girl's turtle is the message in this movie. And also, try not to be a scumbag if you're taken in by a group of boarding school girls in the Deep South.
Wow.
This movie, I'm telling you, it's on Stars right now. This movie is wild. It just, you're like, there's absolutely nothing appropriate about this movie. And wow.
Wow.
And he kills the turtle.
I don't even know what to say to that. So
check it out. I am telling you, just it has to be seen to believe that this movie got made. Wow. And it's shocking.
1971.
1971.
Whew.
Yeah.
All right. I might have to skip that one, Paul, but yeah.
I will say this. I actually, this does. Well, I want to say one other thing about Clint Eastwood. He has a really weird relationship with the Civil War. I'm just gonna say that this Good, Bad, and the Ugly, the Outlaw Josie Wales. I would have a feeling that if he were the protesting type, he would totally be running around the South trying to prevent people from pulling down statues of Confederate soldiers and stuff. Just I don't know, but yeah. So,
all right. Well, you can find out what kind of weirdness Paul has been watching week to week, so make sure you stop on by, and that way you can know what kind of weirdness you can add to your life. So, Paul, as always, thank you for broadening our cinema horizons with the weird. So, all right, this week we once again get an opportunity to find out if Susan has watched more of the movies on her list. This section we call Susan Finally Saw. Susan, talk to us. Let us know what you did.
Okay, so I did not watch a Clint Eastwood movie as my Susan finally saw, because reasons. Anyway, I decided I needed to watch something funny, so I scoured my list and saw a comedy. And there was another one by the same director that I enjoyed thoroughly. So I said, you know what, I'm going to watch that one. I watched The Blues Brothers from 1980.
Wow.
We have discussed this before about, is this a musical or not? We're not going to talk about that now. Thank you. I thought this movie was hilarious. I thought it was funny, and I really enjoyed it. I can tell you, I am probably the last person on the planet that had not seen this movie. And I now can pick up things or like quotes and stuff that I was like, I have no idea where that came from, but I say it anyway.
Like, I hate Illinois Nazis.
Exactly. So yeah, that's what I finally saw, and it's now checked off my list of 175 movies. One less.
Is it only 175?
No. No, it's probably a lot more than that, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But
Like-
I always want more suggestions, everybody. Please give me more suggestions for movies that you think I haven't seen, because chances are I haven't. If you start the phrase, have you ever seen the movie? You could look at me and I will probably say no. So give me movies to watch.
My list is like 175 deep, so I can only imagine.
No.
All right. Well, Susan, thank you so much for sharing your film watching journey. Again, you can suggest films for Susan to see if she has seen them, and if she hasn't, she will add them to her list. So, all right. This week on Real Time Rewind, I just want to remind you about one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. This movie, I can honestly say I have probably lost count of how many times I've seen it, because it is impactful. It is, it's one of those movies that when you watch it, you realize that you just want to be a better person, so that you don't end up in prison, because it's called The Rock. Starring Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery, The Rock is an absolute gem of a film from an action movie standpoint. And while many folks have seen it, I'm often surprised by how many people have not seen this movie. It is right up there with classics like Con Air, and which I should talk about that movie sometime down the road. But in its own way, The Rock is just one of those movies that if it's on and I'm walking through the living room, I'm going to sit down and watch it again. So just a reminder, if you've not seen The Rock, make sure you check it out. If you have, watch it again, because it's always worth the watch. So, Susan, you have, right?
Multiple times, yes.
Okay, good, because I don't hear you quote lines from it. You need to start. So,
show me good
right.
speed.
She was the prom queen. So, all right. We are now at a point where we have to talk about movies that have come out. We have one we're going to talk about in this particular segment we like to call Real Quick Reviews. And so, can I just very quickly say, guys, we talked about perhaps, and I'm going to slip this in simply because I watched it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. The documentary Schumacher. It's on Netflix. If you like F1 racing, it's for you. That's all I want to say. I heard so many times during this movie that I was like, okay, maybe I need to go watch the live race. But it's a great documentary. I'll leave it at that. But just because it had been on our list, and I was actually, wow, okay, F1 racing is something else. All right, so. We will, however, together be talking about a little movie that Paul suggested. It is called Best Sellers. And all you had to say, Paul, before giving me Aubrey Plaza, was that Michael Caine was in it. And I would have been right there just quickly.
Yeah. And
So, Paul, I'd like you to start us off on this one.
I love Aubrey Plaza. Okay. Okay. So here's the thing about this movie. First of all, Michael Caine still has it. Like, we were talking about Clint Eastwood, how I just don't feel like he has a presence anymore. Michael Caine still has a presence, and it's remarkable. And he is really, really fantastic in this movie. And honestly, it's like this is a weird turn for Aubrey Plaza in that it's not weird. Take that for what you will. But this movie is basically a take on the whole J.D. Salinger thing, where it's like, recluse writer, only wrote one book, never heard from again. But then adds some twists on it as far as how to bring him back to write another book, and it's pretty basic, but it was exactly what I needed when I watched it. I think I really, really liked it. It wasn't great, but it was perfectly even keel throughout, and it gave me a nice ending. And I for having watched multiple Clint Eastwood movies, all week, and then getting this with, it was exactly what I needed when I saw it. Just yes, it made me happy, and that's what I needed. So,
yeah, this film was one of those movies that when I sit down to watch it, I go into it with no sense of what I want it to accomplish. I just want to soak it in. Aubrey Plaza is so good because of what she doesn't she doesn't do what she typically does in films that she's in.
Right.
Her humor is utilized very well, but in a restrained enough area that it doesn't take away from the overall story that this movie is telling. So I think she's utilized fantastically in this movie, and you still get that Aubrey Plaza that you love. Michael Caine is Michael Caine. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
But can we please round of applause for a quick cameo by Cary Elwes in one of the funniest moments in this movie? Just an absolute gem. Susan, bestsellers, your thoughts?
I mean, I think you guys basically hit everything on the head that I was going to say. Like, I can't say that I'm as big of an Aubrey Plaza fan as Paul, but I do like her and I like her work. But I sometimes it gets bordering on like, okay, this is too much. But I think she was right where she needed to be, right on the money. There was not too much. She didn't take away, like you said, she didn't take away from the story with her humor and her kind of like quirkiness. I think it just added. And Michael Caine is always amazing. So
yeah,
and it was a good feeling, I guess. It was a feel good kind of story, if you will, but like I don't know.
Yeah. I have to say, I was hoping we were going to get a Scott Pilgrim versus the World trifecta because Ellen Wong is in this film as well, as Aubrey Plaza was in Scott Pilgrim. And Ellen Wong, again,
she's so good,
funny in this movie, so good.
It
was really enjoyable film.
Yeah, Aubrey Plaza and her play off each other so well. Yeah.
And
this is a surprise. Like, honestly, like this is one that you would just. There's no way. I'm guessing 99% of the people on the planet have never even heard of this movie. More, and it's just like, yeah, go see this movie. It's super fun. It's not going to offend you in any way. It's not going to ask you to make any sort of judgment on anything in any way. It's just going to ask you to sit down, enjoy. Nice minor little kind of flip at the end, and it's great. I don't know. Yeah.
Susan, you were also going to say, Susan?
Oh.
I was just adding on that it wasn't too much. Like that they play off of each other, like, but it didn't take over and distract from everything.
Gotcha. Yeah. I will tell you guys the mistake I made in all of the movie work we did to prepare for this particular episode is that I watched this one before Cry Macho, and I should have flipped them.
Oh,
so
yeah, no.
so I'm like, huh. And then the next day it was, meow. And so,
Yeah.
But-
I got Cry Macho out of the way. I did my rewatch of Outlaw Josie Wales, which I hadn't seen since I was like 12, out of the way. I got all of the Clint Eastwood heavy, stuff out of the way, and then put this in, and it was perfect. It's exactly the tonic I needed.
Well, congratulations on that. So, all right. So, for bestsellers on our 5 taco scale, we'll finish with Paul since he's the Aubrey Plaza fan in the house. I will give this movie 3 solid tacos plus guac. Loved it, enjoyed it, and it was a fun ride. Susan, what about you?
I'm going to give it 4 tacos. Just, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
All right, Paul?
Yeah, I'm doing the 3 tacos and guac. Big, huge heaping serving of guac. Delicious tacos. Just and I really, really, really like the ending. I can't stress that enough.
Oh yeah,
it absolutely stuck the ending by not but like yay and it was just chef kiss for the ending.
We need more movies like this.
Absolutely.
We need more movies like this. It doesn't ask you to work too hard, but it does deliver. And so bestsellers, make sure you check it out. It is available on video on demand on Prime is where I found it. And check it out. It's well worth it.
It's in theaters also if you want to go out and see it in theaters. Gonna not deter anybody from that.
Right. And I just hope people watch it because they'll be surprised by it. It really is worth watching. So all right. Well, we have had another fun episode talking movies. I'm excited about next week, guys, because we're actually going to pause and talk about the movies that are coming out for the rest of the year. We're going to actually do a preview of several films that we are looking forward to as we begin this juggernaut of a end of year run for new releases. So I'm excited, guys, to talk about that.
Yeah, it's our last chance to catch our breath because starting in October, it's just like no movie.
Indeed. Yeah. In fact, Susan, you'll be happy to know that we're only, as of next Tuesday, 2 weeks out from the release of the movie you've been looking forward to and hope doesn't get moved.
It better not get moved.
It's not.
It's not
the
gonna get
reason.
moved. It's not gonna get moved. It's not gonna get
the
moved.
whole reason why we're doing why we're doing next week. Looking what movies we're looking forward to through the end of the year is because they're done moving stuff out of the year.
They're gonna happen. Yeah, they're gonna happen. So if you want to know what we're going to be talking about, you got to tune in next week and find out because we have a lot of movies that we're going to talk about and preview. And that way you can start to build your list of movies you're going to go check out so that when you join us week to week, you can let us know what you think about the films that we will be talking about. So make sure you join us next week, Tuesday evening. You can catch us right here on your stream of choice, whether it be Facebook Live, YouTube, or if you're our friends, you can see us on our pages. And so, make sure you join us. Susan, Paul, always fun. So thank you so much for all you bring.
Yeah.
Yay.
Awesome.
Fun.
Fun indeed. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And don't forget, we always like to tell you, you are awesome. You're amazing. And the world's a better place because you are in it. We will see you next time on Real to Real Talk.